everyone, and welcome to tonight's event. My name is Andrea, and I help run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into our discussion of Misty Copeland's new book, Black Ballerinas, I'd like to share a little bit about the history of the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass on the 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until after 94 years, the Strand is the sole survivor that is now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. We want to thank all of you for your support, because without loyal book lovers and authors, we wouldn't be here where we are today. So thank you. Tonight, we're thrilled to have with us Misty Copeland for the launch of her new book, Black Ballerinas. Misty made history by becoming the first African-American female principal dancer in the American Ballet Theatre. Best-selling author of Life in Motion and the children's books Firebird and Bunheads, she has been the recipient of the Lenore Annenberg Fellowship in the Arts and an inductee in the Boys and Girls Club Alumni Hall of Fame. In 2015, Misty was named into the Time 100 list and was one of Glamour magazine's Women of the Year. She lives in New York City, and you can visit her online at mistycopeland.com. Joining Misty in conversation is Christina Johnson. Christina had a 25-year career performing as a member of Boston Ballet, the Dance Theatre of Harlem, and the Dance Theatre of Harlem, where she rose to the rank of principal dancer in 4 years. And she was an original member of the Complexions Contemporary Ballet. She also danced in Switzerland for 7 years with the Ballet du Grand Théâtre de Genève, hard by pronunciation, and the Ballet Vassal. Christina has been sought after and held positions as a teacher and coach for professional companies, schools, and universities. She has also earned her MFA in dance from Holland University. At the end of tonight's event, we will be taking some audience questions from you, so just submit those using the button at the bottom of your screen, Ask a Question. So now, without further ado, please help me welcome to the stage Misty and Christina.
Hello. Welcome, Christina Johnson. I am so honored to be able to have a conversation with you and to show more people your beautiful, beautiful journey and story and contribution to ballet and to our legacies. This was really the force and reason behind writing this book, was to be able to share the stories of Black ballerinas throughout history, but especially Black ballerinas who have impacted my life personally and my journey. And it has been an array of people that I've not met, that have long since passed, or people just from afar that have influenced me in some way. And I've been so fortunate to work with you and to know you personally and in a professional setting. So I want to welcome you and just kind of dive in and get to know a little bit more about your background, I think, to start, just to give the audience a little bit of your history and how you entered into the ballet world.
Great. I hope this reception is what is going well. We may just stick with us tonight, no matter what. Misty, thank you. I'm delighted and I'm inspired and I'm moved that this moment is even happening. There's so much in it. There's so much in just this coming together, like what we each did to get to this moment in time. Mm-hmm. And so I guess the place to start would be that I started dancing when I was 7. I used to dance around the house. My parents said, please let me know if I'm stuck, because you're getting stuck and I'm...
Okay, I hear and see you clearly.
Okay, great. That story of, little girl dancing around the house just out of sheer joy or connection, and my parents understanding, let's try ballet as a start. The classics. They had enough understanding of culture and art, and know that, you know, the classics is a good start. And I always say that I don't remember the first day and the specifics of my first ballet class, but I remember the feeling of just that things felt pretty natural. Like this thing, because I was 7, so I can say this now, this thing that I was experiencing felt like this was my place. And so I think I can say now that was the beginning of, you know, I experienced my full expression through that training. Because words weren't my way. My way was something you can't find it in the words, the movement and the body and the expression. And that happened to be classical ballet. It happened to be, that was my path. You know, it's a very, it's not a path for everyone. Mm-hmm. It's a very specific, highly, highly disciplined, intensely, all-encompassing, if you really go the path, right? So it's just not for everyone. And so there was a part of the things that might push people away from ballet are what turned me on. The discipline and the exactitude and the precision. And so it was a good match for me, you know?
I felt the exact same way coming into classical dance. And I think it's so important to hear stories like yours, because I think there's such an assumption that all Black dancers have the same journey and have the same experience of being a part of this world, of the ballet community. And that was what was so important for me in writing this book, was to share, yes, there is this through line of the obstacles that a lot of Black dancers face, but we're not a monolith and we don't all have the same experiences. But I do share this in common with you, exactly what you're saying, that there was nothing in my life that I could truly find the words to be able to express myself in the way that I needed to be able to deal with the circumstances that I was in, you know, growing up. And ballet was that thing. And it is a very specific thing that's not for everyone. And I think it takes a unique person to be a part of it, and you have to love the sacrifice and the work that you're putting in, and the dedication and the discipline, everything that you're saying, all of those things, you know, those are important qualities, I think, to be able to stick it out and last and succeed in such a demanding career. So, you know, I think that it's interesting, though, again, to hear your journey, and we'll dive in some more. But, you know, my upbringing and introduction into classical dance, it was actually, and it kind of goes against what my experience would go on to be, but my experience coming into ballet at 13 years old this was the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. It was the first time I felt like I fit in. And that would change once I became a professional and I entered into a white company, American Ballet Theatre, and I was the only Black woman. But I want to hear a bit more about your experience of, you know, the people you were surrounded by, how you saw yourself in that environment, if it affected you at all, if you were the only Black girl, like, what was your experience?
Oh, yeah. Woo! Okay. There's a lot in there. You know, when you were talking earlier, I find myself saying lately, like, when a challenge comes up or when I'm with somebody that we're trying to do something together, and it's like, come on, I always say, I find myself saying, I was a ballerina. I can do anything.
Completely.
Like, that's how I feel.
Yes.
Because that track, that getting to that place is more, again, it's more than I can find words for. And unless you've done it and been there, you really can't. You can write about it, kind of, sort of, but, you know, it's something that I experienced, by the way, in doing my MFA studies. I will get around to your, you know, it's linked together. And in those studies, which was so wonderful and rich and full, and I wanted to expand the conversation or understanding I had around this art form, and so that's why I went to school. And it had been, I don't know, 20 whatever 30 years since I had sat at a desk and been in a studio and in a studio
Yeah.
in a in a classroom,
Yeah.
and studying, and it was very dense. And I noticed that we were reading things that were saying to us that the ballerina lacks agency and autonomy and is part of the male gaze, and it's very, very submissive. And they would talk about a particular piece of a ballet, which I did, Four Temperaments. Mm-hmm. And the expression was like, she's being manipulated and she's being suppressed, and we discussed these things, which is wonderful. That's what an MFA is. You dig in there from all these different perspectives. And I was really staying open, because I was like, okay, this is another way of looking at this. But as I started continuing, I realized that's not my experience. Mm. I never, ever felt disempowered or like I wasn't continuing to step into the fullness of who I could be. Yes, there were challenges. There's so many things, but none of those things ever said to me, this isn't for you. You don't belong. Like there was nothing that said that to me. And so coming back to a little bit what you were asking, my journey was glorious.
I love
And when I say glorious, I mean, like I said, like life, like there are many things, there were challenges, and it was hard, and it was so many things, but there was never a notion for me that I wouldn't be doing this.
Right. Do you think that had something to do with, maybe the support that you had at home, or your parents, or the way that I feel like all of these things play into how you see yourself and how you see possibilities for yourself. But I also think that every artist, every person that steps into art has a completely different experience. And that's what's so beautiful about it. And I feel like you have and had this incredible ability to really take on the powers that be that are performing and that are ballet, rather than looking at certain roles as putting you in a box, or saying that, because I think that's kind of when we look at how ballet was created, I mean it men have been the driving force behind it for so many generations, and a lot of these roles can be a bit suppressing for the woman, or but again, it's your interpretation of how you take on those parts.
It's telling a story. There's so many stories, and we have to become those stories. We have to embody and live and express and be a vessel, this highly, highly trained vessel through which this can be expressed. Right. So yeah.
I mean, do you think that it was what allowed you to be able to just be you and encompass, be this vessel to be able to express, this art form and tell these stories? Do you think it was because of the, maybe the support or the love that you had?
Yes. Good. Thanks for bringing me back around to that, because that is important. I mean, I think a few things. We came from parents. My mother's German, full 100% German. My father's a Black man from the South Side of Chicago. And that already gives me a certain perspective
Mm-hmm.
on the color of her skin. And so not at all a conscious decision or conclusion that I came to as a child, but it's something that I lived, which
Mm-hmm.
is I never understood that I should think of I couldn't do anything because of the color of my skin. That was just never. Maybe I missed that memo, or maybe it'd be interesting to talk to my siblings about it, because maybe I was just in this bubble of like, but life is so
It's a
beautiful.
beautiful place to be in, I think, especially as a child. And, a lot of my experience, I mean, I grew up in a very, very difficult situations and atmospheres, and I was very aware that I was a biracial girl, but that I was going to be seen and viewed as a Black woman. Like, that was something that was talked about a lot. But when I went into the ballet world, I was like, oh, I feel like my identity became ballerina, and I felt like this is a place that I fit in and I can thrive. And then I became a professional, and it kind of all hit me again, like, oh my gosh, I feel like there are so many obstacles and hurdles because I'm the only one. So what was your journey like, leaving your home studio and becoming a professional? And the first company you danced with was Boston Ballet, is that correct?
Yep.
And what was it like in terms of diversity? Was that something that you were even conscious of? Were there any obstacles when you were in Boston?
Yeah. Okay, good. So I graduated from high school half a year early because I knew I wanted to go and dance. And so I was a very, very good student, and got extra.
Most ballerinas are.
Yeah. Side note, right? Exactly. That's true.
Hard work,
Yeah.
discipline. You want it,
Yeah. And as soon as I graduated from high school, I had done a summer intensive with Boston Ballet, and so they asked me to come back for the fall. And I rented a room from the mother of one of the former dancers of Boston Ballet, a few blocks from ballet. My parents were divorced at the time, and my mother was clipping coupons, and we were figuring things out. And fortunately, she was resourceful enough to apply for all kinds of grants and scholarships and whatever she could. And she was always there filling things out. And I got grants and scholarships. And so when I graduated from high school, I rented this room, and I was a waitress at Brigham's.
Wow.
Morning shift, 5:30 in the morning, I had to be there. And then by 11:30, I was in the studio ready for my day. I was supporting myself at Brigham's. And I remember that my legs, because as a waitress, you're on your feet all morning, and they were like burning.
Yeah.
Those like sheer stockings, those ones that you can't like puncture a hole through to like support my legs, because I had a long day. Yeah. So, that was, so that was that. And I was at Boston, and I loved it there. It was familiar. I was progressing. I was right there when E. Virginia Williams and Violette Verdi, when the passing of the torch. So I had the blessing and the gift of a few glimpses of Violette in terms of a student. And I was told that I would, in our year meeting, I guess, that I would have a place. I would have a place at Boston Ballet, like this. They could see me being there and growing, and growing. No particular, like, I can see you as a principal, but yeah, you would, and that was good for me. At the same time, I know that there were, and those who were at Boston Ballet in these days will remember better than I. There were
What years were you?
So this was 1982, 83.
Okay.
81, 82, 83.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, good. And so Augustus van Heerden was a principal dancer in a dance. Oops, that's coming. Boston Ballet. So I knew Gus from there. And I understood that there were some grumblings about his roles potentially diminishing when Violette took over. These are things that we don't really talk about, right? So I mean, now, like, I don't really know, maybe it was talked about, I don't really know the depth of it, but I heard like kind of just grumblings about that. And then for me, it was like, it wasn't something I attached to. It actually wasn't even something I somehow, in a twisted kind of way, didn't really connect with. And maybe that was my way of.
And he is a man of color.
Yes, he's from South Africa. Yeah, man of color. Thanks. That makes it. That's the whole. Yes. So I was kind of, and so that was kind of on the edge. It wasn't like the most. It wasn't the thing that was like, wait a minute, I need to leave. I need to find my place. But it was a time in my life that I was like, let me just see what else is out there. Right. And so, of course, New York. You go to New York. That's where you went to dance in those days.
Yeah.
So I auditioned for ABT, Joffrey Ballet, Dance Theatre of Harlem. I think there was some other. Anyway, I can't remember. And Dance Theatre of Harlem offered me a contract and an apprentice contract. And I went home, and I still have this list: the pros and cons for Boston Ballet and pros and cons for DTH.
What was that?
I should have pulled it up before so I could things that stood out were, for instance, it's very unfamiliar. It's Harlem. It's dangerous. Maybe Arthur Mitchell is to work with. I've heard that somehow. I understood that. Boston is familiar. I'm told I have a future.
Did you ever see, I mean, were one of the pros being surrounded by other dancers that looked like you? Or was that not even something that you factored in?
That's an interesting question. I would have to look at that list. And the fact that I can't say definitively, I'm curious about it, but maybe that wasn't, that's going to be a fun follow-up to this. Because I'm quite curious.
Yeah.
But it wasn't it definitely wasn't on the top of the list.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'll tell you kind of a funny, so did I answer your question? Because I can go all kinds of directions. Because this leads me to the flesh tone tights.
Okay. Yes.
And I have kind of an interesting story, or I think it is, but
because and this is something that is so relevant today.
Yes.
For people in the audience that may not know about the history of classical ballet having a uniform from the time that it was created, and that uniform is to wear European pink tights. The color is literally called European pink. I know that it's evolved, and we now have like peach and some other colors came into play. But the point shoes, the ballet slippers, and the tights, those are the colors that are made as part of the uniform. And these are subtle ways that have excluded dancers of color for so many generations. And Dance Theatre of Harlem was really the first company to say, to acknowledge, I think, that the pink tight is a representation of the skin, and it's supposed to be a continuation of the line, the point shoe, the tight, all of this. And Arthur Mitchell decided that the whole company would wear their skin-colored tights and point shoes, and that became really a staple within Dance Theatre of Harlem.
Yeah, excuse me. And the thing is that I think for white people, that never occurred to them, like that.
No,
pink tights,
not at all.
Flesh tone. It's just like that was, So what was interesting for me is because of my training and my upbringing in classical ballet, pink tights and pink point shoes were it wasn't like, oh, why are my tights pink? And
it's part of the uniform. It's what we wear since we're little kids.
It's the uniform. And so when I remember the first time I got to Dance Theatre of Harlem, I saw the company in Studio 3. And I just like looked in the doorway and I saw all these brown-legged ballerinas. And it wasn't like I was saying, oh my God, look at all of me.
Yeah.
It was just like, this is the feeling. I'm kind of retrieving the feeling. It was like, oh, okay. This is what it is. But
Right.
I did feel like I'm finally seeing my people. And so when I first got my people in terms of the full, and when I first got my tights and I matched the shoes, and and by the way, please bring me back on track, but this is a shout out to Collage Dance Collective, where I just was teaching in Memphis, Tennessee, Kevin Thomas's company. And I was so moved when I walked along the wall and I saw their little store where they have their tights. People can get their tights and color punches and spray can and bring it up to the front desk and pay for it. And it had all the tights and what color, tan equals, whatever. They let you know how to match it, because that was a whole thing. Back then. We figured it out. Right. But anyway, I'm going to come back to my story, which is that the first time I started, I looked down at my legs and feet. I was like, okay, like this is what it is. It was strange for me to look down and not see my pink tights and pink point shoes.
Right.
But then, of course, the more you start wearing this and then seeing your reflection, and then, what I say is like, and then it's like, oh, there's all of me. There I am. Oh, there I am. Wow. And then I could never wear pink tights again.
Wow.
I just couldn't. It all made sense to me.
Wow. That's so beautiful.
Yes. And that's the incredible Arthur Mitchell, I mean, that he did that, and just like that alone is a gift for brown ballet dance.
Exactly. To have that vision of
yourself
is so empowering, and your quick rise through the company and through the ranks, and your impact on the ballet community and history, and reason I wanted to include you in this book, not only because of what you contributed to ballet and that more people need to know your story, but also us meeting and working together. I think that being a performer is not your only calling. As a teacher and as a mentor, you made such a huge impact on me, and I wanted to share that story in this book because you were such a nurturer when you were coaching me with Complexions, when I took on the role that was created on you, Ave Maria, for Complexions. And I wanted to be able to share again that we are complex and we have all, different experiences as Black women in classical dance. And I wanted to be able to share your experiences and then how you've impacted me, and the beauty of how we are individuals, and that creates the most beautiful artists. And that's why it's important to have representation and to have diversity, because you get such a fuller range of incredible artistry on the stage.
Who we are.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Love you.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Talk all night. So good to have this interruption.
So what we're going to do, everyone in the audience has submitted a few questions. If you haven't yet, you still have some time. We're going to go through a few of them now. And one actually kind of ties in really well with what you were just talking about. And it's, do you think the ballet world has become more inclusive and diverse over the last few years?
Yeah, we can both speak to that. I mean, I think we also have different perspectives. I think that, Christina, you being out there as a teacher and in these studios, you see a lot more and different things than I do. And my experience has been that in the past year and a half, throughout the pandemic, with this uprising of Black Lives Matter and this racial reckoning that the world has experienced, ballet has really been impacted in the best way possible. I feel like as a company member and internally having conversations within American Ballet Theatre and within other companies and having conversations with other professional dancers, they feel, dancers of color I feel, from what they've told me, feel more empowered to speak up about their experiences and not be afraid to say the things that need to change, and that people are actually listening, that it's a real conversation. So I would say that there has been this like window of hope that's opened up. We still have so far to go, in my opinion, but that's been my experience over the course of the past 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's like when I can't remember his name, who broke the 100-yard dash, and from that day on, like he broke the record, and after he broke the record, like many more people started breaking the record. So there's something about, now that like this thing has been cracked open, and I guess this thing, what that is just mostly fortified, grounded questions to ask. So this thing is cracked open about this field that we've been in for so long, and it's like everything is being cracked open right now. We have to examine everything. Like there's no getting out of this anymore.
Yeah.
And so the impetus, like we feel that, right? And so again, we're artists and we feel things in maybe other ways, and we're all trying to find the way to serve, to be the ones who help with this transition, really, to be quite honest. And so what is inside of this thing, yes, we're seeing more students of color. We're definitely seeing more students of color in ballet, partly because of Misty. So before, so I'm just saying, but also, we are seeing them on the brochures and all the programs and in the front row, and that's all good, there's steps, but like for me, there's a much deeper conversation to have, and that has to do really with consciousness. I mean, really. And so that's a whole nother podcast, let's say, because, but it's not, it has to go that deep, because that has to shift. Because if that doesn't shift, then we're just doing these things that will look like something is changing.
And eventually fade. I think it's really getting to the root of the issues and really diving in deeper to these institutions and seeing representation in all aspects of what ballet is. Like you're saying, it's not just about putting a person of color on a poster or on a pamphlet or, having a couple more in the corps de ballet, but seeing teachers within these big schools and companies who reflect the dancers, seeing people of color who are on the board of directors, who are working behind the scenes. There's a lot of work to be done.
And I'm just you got to interrupt because Misty and I will just keep going back and forth. I want to add this one little piece, which I believe is pretty significant. And I don't know if anybody shares this perspective, but I'm just going to kind of be courageous and speak to it. And that is that in my journey to becoming a ballerina, and we can talk about what that even is, a ballerina, right? Because there are differences. That's kind of so, but in my journey to becoming a ballerina, again, there was never a time when I thought that this thing, ballet, was not available to me if I couldn't do it. I mean, if I had the reason, I had the slippers and tights and everything, and I never thought, there was nothing in my path that was telling me otherwise. So there's also, and that's what I mean about like who who are we individually, and are we really like aligned with who we are? That's part of the consciousness I was talking about. Like that's each of the directors, the theater, that's all of our responsibility if we want to see a shift.
Yeah.
That's kind of, okay.
Absolutely. No, and it's worthy of taking the time to talk about that, because we do need to see a shift in many places. The next, actually, we have several questions kind of in the same vein. I'm going to kind of lump them together, so it's a bit of a three-parter. But what advice do you have for young ballerinas, specifically, and especially if they're starting to audition? And also, what advice do you have for parents of young dancers to help support them?
Yeah. I feel like Christina's has her fingers on the pulse of this more than I do. I would say, that it's so important to have a strong support system around you throughout this whole journey. I mean, no matter whatever it is you do in life as a young person, it's so important to have mentors and guidance and people who are going to lend their opinion and support, but coming from a loving place. And I feel like it's just important to, as a young person in a competitive field, to not compare yourself to other people and really be able to focus and stand in your own, truth and power. And, I feel like when it comes to auditions, and this is my experience and something that I look for, that it's important to be kind to the people around you. I think it's important for people who are watching you audition, that it's not just about how you perform as an individual, but how you are a team player. And though it's not an athletic team, like being a ballet company, you are a part of a bigger picture. And I think that it makes a difference in how you connect with other people.
And, that ties beautifully into what I was saying earlier too, which is knowing that you have something to offer, and the best offering is to be who you are. Show up who you are in the way that you understand yourself to be, because you don't need to apologize for that. That is where you're at, wherever you're finding yourself, and show up as authentically who you are. Yes, you have to have the technique and the training, and yes, instead of a double or like all of those things are. But what Misty's talking about, what we look for as people who are picking dancers, we look for that as well. So then, as a teacher, I ask myself, how do I teach that? How do I incorporate? What is that? What is that thing? Is it, like you said, is it that, making sure that there's a nurturing community, making sure, there's a mentoring aspect, whatever we can talk about what those ingredients are. My sister, years and years ago, she read Gelsey Kirkland's Dancing on My Grave. And after she read that, she called me, and I think she was crying, or maybe we were both crying, and she was saying something like, I can't believe like you've been living in this world. Like, how did you make it out okay? Right. And of course that's quite extreme, but it's all in there. Yeah. You can have that experience. And so then the question is, how are we supporting our young, like what exactly embedded in this thing we call ballet is life lessons. And so we have walked away, or we're not walking away, because this is our life, it's like a religion in a sense. And so we want, like I personally as a teacher, I want that for my students, but I'm still learning what is that? Like, how do you get that out of somebody? But anyway, I think it's really coming back. There are a lot of ingredients. And again, the support system is really important. Understanding that you are also auditioning them. I always tell my people I'm mentoring, I'm like, remember, you're auditioning them. How does it feel when you walk in there? How does the director talk to you? What's the experience you're having? And so then you can you know, you're also auditioning. So there's that too, you know,
That's
that
such good advice, Christina, because I often say that as well, that you have to think about not just being accepted into a place where you might not be given the attention and the nurturing and be treated well, but it's really about you feeling comfortable and making a place your home as well, that you are a part of that process, and not to be the submissive, you know, not
It's like,
participating.
tell me who you are
Mm-hmm.
through this thing we're calling dance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want when we are in the front of a room and we're on a panel or we're choosing, or that's what we want. We want to know who you are, because that's what we do. We are storytellers, but we have to have this connection. We have to have this some kind of exchange, because we can dance on our own in our rooms, you know, with nobody looking, but that's not what this path has been, at least not for me, and not I'm
Yeah.
you know. And so I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, coming back to understanding who you are.
Yeah.
No, it's terribly important. What's behind the technique? You know? All right, everyone, this has been lovely. I've got one more question to round out the night. We have more than that. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to all of them, but your questions are wonderful, and the chat's been wonderful. The final question for Misty specifically, but feel free to collaborate. How did you determine who would be in your very vitally important book? That's from Liz.
This is a really great question, and I've been saying this all of today doing interviews, but you know, there are moments when I wake up and I'm like, I forgot this person, or I didn't use this person. But you know, again, it's not, this isn't a comprehensive list of every Black ballerina, but these are, you know, specific people that I've had personal relationships with or really impacted me. But it was really, really difficult to choose. And I actually started out with 26 ballerinas. And at the last minute, I added Marion Sujette because she's such a, I think that often we look at, you know, what Black ballet dancers have made it into companies. And that isn't always, you know, the contributions that we've had to this art form. And Marion in particular is someone who was a teacher to so many dancers coming from Philadelphia. And she was such a through line in so many of these ballerinas' stories and journeys. And so that was really important for me to include. And again, Christina that wasn't even a question. Like, she was someone who was so influential, you know, in my journey. And also, again, someone whose journey should be documented in a bigger light, because these Black ballerinas throughout history have contributed to our ballet legacy and deserve to be acknowledged.
Beautiful. Thank you.
That's so wonderful. I want to thank you both so much for taking the time to hang out with us and talk more about your experiences. It's been really wonderful. To everyone who is in the audience, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you haven't, for some reason, gotten your copy of Black Ballerina yet, you can click the green button on your screen. And when you order it from Strand, you'll also get a signed bookplate from the very lovely Misty Copeland. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Love you. Bye. See you.